And your parents, whether they have money more than you or not, once you come in contact, they have that superiority, that spiritual and psychological superiority above you because they are your parents. And this is the same thing that happens between us and Europeans. That is the reason why we talk about betrayal, we talk about our leaders compromising, we talk about all these things simply because we don't assess the psychological, the spiritual level of the damage that has been caused on us as African people, so that when we engage with Europeans people, we always engage from that position of inferiority and ready to serve them rather than serving our people. So this situation,
they need their freedom. They want to be free. They want to live a free life.
If it doesn't touch your conscience, follow me your conscience. I want to bury it inside here.
Yes.
All the people that you see here are students. But the most important thing is that they don't know what to expect in the future. But the French kids who are going to school just like you, they know already when they finish the school, they have a job, they have a house, they have a
Abba! America! Abba! France! Abba! England! Abba! Arab! Abba! Everyone! Abba! Africa, we stand together! Abba! Muslim food! Commando! Muslim food! Commando! Alananki! Oh, Rasoul!
peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people, those at home, those abroad, and those in the future. My name is King Kabbalah from the African Continental Unity Party. Please receive our revolutionary greetings. As always, we say that if you have 2 shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have 2 trousers, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on streets. This revolution is in the mind. Precisely, this revolution is psychological, it is mental, it is spiritual, it is material, it is financial, it is political. This revolution is holistic. And as I said, it is spiritual, mental, physical. Today, I'm happy to discuss a mental and I guess also a spiritual aspect of this revolution. We often not talk much about it, but I think it is very important for us to understand the change that we are supposed to make in order for us to be able to create the Africa that we want. Now, talking about the mental or psychological aspect of this revolution, I want to explain a concept that is popular among psychologists. The concept is called social calibration or social positioning. And this is a fight, a kind of fight that every 2 individuals who come together in a meeting or to meet for the first time engage in order to position themselves. It is an exercise that your mind engages in when you are meeting up with a situation, but mostly a person, a strange person for the first time. Your mind begins to profile that person, to categorize that person in order to assess a type of relationship that you will have with that person. And the result of that profiling exercise will be you positioning yourself either as inferior towards that person or superior toward that person or equal towards that person. And that positioning itself determines the type of relationship that you will have, the interaction and everything that will unfold between you and that person, the power, the influence, and so forth and so on. That's how we are forming or building our relationships. And this is very important that we understand it. The reason why I'm explaining it is because we as Africans today, in our countries, Congo, Nigeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, with our names, John, Patrick, Francois, so forth and so on, with our languages, French, English, Portuguese, so forth and so on. All these things that I've just explained or described, which are fundamental part of our identity, were the creation not of God or not of ourselves, but the creation of European ancestors on us, and they were imposed on us. They created us in the form in which we are today. In our countries, the boundaries that we have were created by Europeans. They created us in our countries such as Congo, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, so forth and so on. They gave us their names, they gave us their language, and to be more precise, they kind of own us. They created us as entities or as subjects to be owned and to be used as properties. I think the case of the King Leopold with the Congo can pretty much explain what I'm talking about. At some point, Congo was a property of Belgium king, and it was transferred to the Belgium as a country, and even today it remains a property of European entities, whether we like it or not. And it is the case for all African countries. I was told that South Africa is listed on New York Stock Exchange as a property, as a private company. Who owned it or who owns it is a question that I leave to you. But what I'm talking about is, since the creation of our countries, or since our countries, our names, our identities were created and imposed on us by people who own us, every time an African leader or an African person, no matter who they are, come in contact with a European entity, whether for business, for political, undertaking, for any kind of interaction, there is a social calibration that takes place, or social positioning that takes place. Before anything takes place between those people, it is actually that psychological fight that will take place. And the result of that psychological fight is that a European person in the back of his mind believes that this African person and their country are actually my property, because they were created by my ancestors. They were earned by my ancestors, and they belong to me, so that I can exploit and plunder them, use them as I wish for my own benefits and development. In the mind of African person, he also believes that this person is my creator, or his ancestor created me, and I am his property. Whether we believe it or not, but this is a psychological struggle that takes place, and the result of that, African person, African president, African minister will always position himself in a position where he can serve European people, whether they've asked him to do it or not. And this is one of the smartest moves that Europeans have done in the 20th century, to create entities that will be automatically function to serve them without any kind of duress. And let me explain what I'm saying by bringing an example of a child and a father. You can be a father right now with the kids. You are maybe 50 years old or 40 years old, but every time you come in contact with your father, your mother, the relationship that you have in normal life changes automatically. You begin to behave yourself. Your mind, your psychology positions you as a child towards your parents. And your parents, whether they have money more than you or not, once you come in contact, they have that superiority, that spiritual and psychological superiority above you, because they are your parents. And this is the same thing that happens between us and Europeans. That is the reason why we talk about betrayal, we talk about our leaders compromising, we talk about all these things simply because we don't assess the psychological, the spiritual level of the damage that has been caused on us as African people, so that when we engage with Europeans people, we always engage from that position of inferiority, and ready to serve them rather than serving our people. So this situation or this condition cannot change if we don't begin this, what I call psychological and spiritual revolution, which must always tackle the names that we have, the identities that we have. What's your name, and what is the name that you give to your children? Is it John, Patrick, or English or French names? Why do you do that? And the point is, as long as we keep on doing these things proudly, I'm telling you that we are going to be always occupying that the place of servants towards Europeans. It is spiritual, it is psychological, it is mental. As long as we are still proud to be Congolese, to be Zimbabwean, to embrace these countries that were imposed on us, these colonial enclosures that we created, these boundaries that we created and imposed on us, we are going to remain subjects to these people, and our fight will always remain within the guidelines of subjects against the owner. And we cannot win this fight. We cannot change fundamentally the continent if we don't tackle this dimension of things. And you can even see that Europeans know that they have a superior position. You can see that in their language, the statements they make, the position they take towards African. For example, the ex-president of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, came to Dakar in Senegal at one of the symbolic university or universities in Africa, which is University of Sheikh Anta Diop, and standing before all Africans, scholars, authorities, and said that the challenge of Africa is because you have never entered the history. Can you imagine that? This audacity, this arrogance and authority can only be explained from the basis of the psychological position or calibration that French people have towards African, because they believe that this entity is our creation. Therefore, there's no history outside of the history that we have created for Africa, right? It's the same thing that Donald Trump expressed when he looks at all African countries and say what you and I know exactly what he said. It is the same thing that the French president Macron said when he said that the problem of Africa is because African women like to have more children. So all this arrogance, audacity can only be explained because these people believe that we are the creation of their ancestors and the owners. So they can say whatever they want to say, they can do whatever they want to do on us, and they feel no guilty about it because they're doing on the entity which they have created anyway. So it is up to us as African people now to begin this revolution at the psychological level, at mental level, and most importantly at the spiritual level as well. We have to refuse European names, European identities. We have to refuse European boundaries, which is our countries. And we need to begin creating ourselves in a way, in a form, in a shape that fits our aspiration, our desire for liberation and emancipation. We have to decide what we want to live on the continent as. The United States of Africa, so be it. The United Nations or Federal of Africa, whatever it is, we have to create ourselves in something different. And that's how we'll be able to psychologically and spiritually command respect and equality with other people of the world. We have to give our children the names that signify something to us, really. The names that really can inspire these children to realize who they are and to fight for that which they are, to fight for that which they are to be reality of their lives. We have to fight for African languages. We have to fight for African identity and African culture to be an expression of our everyday life, not just one day in a year to wake up and wear African attire and say this African day. No, it has to be our daily reality and daily life. Well, I hope this conversation was fruitful to you, and if it is, I plead with you to like the video, share it with your network, and subscribe to our channel. And help us grow. It is one of the way to help, one of the ways that can help our messages to reach a lot of people. So peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all of us African people on the continent, abroad, and in the future. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.